Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Hello, everybody. This is Joanne Victoria with another amazing episode of the Sanity Project podcast. You, the audience, are here to discover a life of clarity, confidence, and success. Our guest today is Marjorie Warkentin. Marjorie Warkentin is an author of Saying Yes to Life, Embracing the Magic and Messiness of the Journey, speaker, life path mentor, and contributing author to thriveglobal.com. Marjorie is a lifelong learner with a passion for connecting theory to the practical applications that lead to transformation. And don't we all want that? With her wealth of experience and broad perspective on life, Marjorie is able to share her wisdom in accessible and inspiring ways. As a woman that has a heart wired to care for others, you can also find her spending time giving back to her community. Marjorie is a wife, mother, and grandmother who lives in Abbotsford, British Columbia, and that's in Canada for those of you who don't know. Welcome to the show, Marjorie Warkentin.
Thank you.
I'm glad that you're here because I think the things that you want to talk about today, we'll get to that in a minute, but what you want to talk about is really important to everybody. But what I first want you to refer to is, how did you get to this place where you're sitting in your house in BC, Canada, talking to Joanne Victoria on the Zoom recording a podcast? How did you get to this place?
Okay, well, how much time do you have?
A few minutes.
Okay, I love this question. And it's interesting as you ask that. I am back in my memory to when I was a little girl. I was 10 years old in grade 4, and I had the best teacher in the world, Miss Hansen, in a little town in Saskatchewan. And every week we would have a creative writing hour. And that turned out to be my favorite time of the week. I would just listen to what she would suggest that we write about, and I would be in another world. And so the thing about writing a book is I can't remember ever not writing. I wrote in a diary as a little girl. I would go on trips with my family. 6 children, all squished into the back seat of a big old car. Of course, no car seats and seat belts in those days. And I would get the window seat because I was the oldest. And I'd take out my notebook and my pencil, and I would write letters to pretend friends. And I'd be in a different world. And I would just have this imagination, just continually writing. So writing a book was always something I thought I would do until life happened. And so I kind of left it. I was always writing. I was always keeping a journal, writing in my diary. And what happened is I became very concerned about pleasing the experts in my life. And I mentioned I was the oldest of 6 children. I happened to be a preacher's kid, grew up in a family where the church was a major part of our life. So not only did I have my father and mother to please, I had the church to please, I had my Sunday school teachers, my school teachers, my piano teacher, and I had a pleasure actually in pleasing them because that's how I got noticed. That's how I was approved of. And I was a helper. It's my personality. And as the oldest of 6 children, I took over. I would tease my mom in later years and tell her she couldn't have raised 6 kids in 9 years without me. And she'd laugh. And it really was true to a certain extent because of the sheer volume of work that there was. And then as I was a young woman, teens, I still didn't know that I could actually trust myself. I wasn't encouraged to question. I was in quite a rigid fundamentalist family, sort of the arena of the rules were there. And if I didn't obey the rules, I probably was going to not only get in trouble, but end up going to hell. So there's a way that I was very careful to please. And I didn't really know that wasn't working for me until I was much older. I sometimes tell people that I didn't go through a real teenage rebellion. I waited until I was in my 30s. By then I was a nurse. By then I was married. I had children. And I realized that there was something that was off, that pleasing my father and pleasing everyone else was I was actually not feeling healthy physically and emotionally.
But at least you realized it.
Yes.
Right. Really, you realized it relatively young compared to most people I speak to.
Yeah. Is that right? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
See, I thought I was a bit late in that. And
again, again, the self-judgment.
Exactly.
We go through this. I mean, I would have to say, especially women, do this to themselves, ourselves. It's the damage we inflict on ourselves that stays with us. Of course, that brings each of us, Joanne and Marjorie, here today. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So what did you do to work through this?
Well, it was great because I met a friend who loved reading, and our little girls were the same age, and we would read books and discuss ideas, and she was a person who wasn't afraid to question. And then because of that, I thought, okay, maybe I can question as well. And then I actually went to see a therapist. And when I think back, that was a really courageous act. And this therapist at that time helped me to see that it was time to take my father off of his pedestal. He was doing the best he could do. He had his vision of how I should live my life. And it was time for me to realize that wasn't my vision, that I could be my own person. And so that was the start of me breaking away. Very painful times, and also very, I grew in strength. During that time as well, I started seeing myself as very capable. I was a nurse, and my husband and I decided in the early 80s, which was very unusual, for him to stay home with our children and for me to work full time. Now, this was in Abbotsford, a rural community. We got a lot of criticism about that, and yet we wanted one of us to stay home with the children, and I had a better paying job than he could get. We didn't want to move out of the community. And so that started a path of me becoming a career woman, a professional woman. And in that role, I still had the experts that I listened to, and yet I gained some confidence as my own person. And as I wrote my book, I realized that I was being led to listen to my own wisdom, even without knowing it. And this is how I would go on to take further education, go on to change jobs when one wasn't working for me. And so my book really is a story of how I was able to move from thinking I couldn't listen to my inner wisdom, probably it would be wrong, I might make a mistake, to trusting myself and believing that that is actually all I wanted to do. And the other thing that happened during this time is I found the value in hiring a coach. And so I was able to have somebody ask me the powerful questions and help me to see that I had intuition that I could trust. And so my metaphor for my intuition is what I call my wise woman. And so in my book, it's the metaphor of hiking with my wise woman through life and the stories that I share. And I see that even before I knew I had a wise woman, I was being led. And so I would say that's why I'm where I am today, is because I was willing to ask some pretty big questions, to take risks, and to stop pleasing everybody else. Asking the questions is can be scary because it's not just the question, it's the thought that you could ask the question. Mm-hmm. And you having to own that. And as I said at the beginning of this podcast, this recording, it's very difficult for women to do that, especially when they are born with whatever place they are in the scheme of things as a child. There are certain expectations placed on them. For you, it was the expectation that you would please everybody. Mm-hmm. And that is it's a burden. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's a burden, and it's not fair to put that on a child, but you were great in moving forward in your life. There's a lot of alignment with what your life was and my life was. Not the oldest. I was the oldest child, wasn't I? I was the oldest grandchild. I was the oldest great grandchild.
by 10 years to everybody else. So it was just kind of odd.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand what you're talking about, and that helps the audience know you. And when you talk about your book and how it benefited you, saying yes to life, embracing the magic and messiness of the journey, which is on Amazon, listeners, pay attention, people. That's what Marjorie is here to talk about the book. Yes, she is here to talk about what she can help people to trust their inner wise woman or man.
Mm-hmm.
But she is here to tell her truth, and you listen to her truth and her story, and then you look at your own life. Not that I want you to compare, people, but I'm telling you, if you're stuck, you can get unstuck one foot at a time, because the ending or the next step in your life is already done. You just don't know it yet.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know that it's accessible to you. So when you say you want to focus on trusting your instincts on the trail of uncertainty, how do you do that?
One of the first things that I do is I reframe what uncertainty means for me. I'm a person that loves to be in control. I like to plan. I like to know what my day is going to look like. And it's very challenging, or it has been in the past, so not so much now. I have struggled with if plans get changed by somebody else. It's almost like I get angry. Like, what? You didn't ask me that you canceled our coffee.
That's funny. Yeah, when you're a controller, because that's fear-based anyway.
It is, but I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that it was, Joanne. And so then I would do everything I could to make sure that I knew how my life was going to be. Mm-hmm. And so one of the biggest lessons in response to your question is recognizing that uncertainty is a given. That there, most mornings, if the truth be told, I mean, now during this period of self-isolation and COVID-19, I think it's really shoved it in my face. But even if this wasn't happening, I have no idea what my day is going to bring. And so rather than seeing uncertainty as a problem, what I've done is seen it as something that perhaps might lead to an adventure. Perhaps if something shifts, well, maybe there's something else that's around the corner. And like you said just a minute ago, the step that I take is already planned. I just don't know it. And so maybe there's a wonderful adventure around the corner if there's a detour in my path, to use the metaphor of hiking. So I think, how do I access my intuition? How do I access my inner wisdom? Is slowing down. I'm much more conscious of the importance of solitude, of time for myself. I will spend time perhaps writing what I'm thinking about, a lot of the walks in nature. I actually pay attention to my breathing. And I don't want it to sound trite and like this is just a magic answer. However, for me, if I stop and take 3 deep breaths, I can feel my nervous system settle down. I can feel my heart rate slowing. And then I actually can think about, okay, what actually is going on for me? What am I feeling physically? What are my thoughts? I have some choice then in how I'm going to be, rather than just triggered and reactive and upset.
People don't realize how important having this time is. The calmer one can become, the more aware you can become, and the more aware you are, the less stressed you are. People are just too anxious. I'm anxious myself to the extent that I'm tired of being kept in lockdown.
Yes.
But I'm in charge of my life, so I'm going to take care of it that way. So you said this twice, this metaphor, hiking. What are you talking about when you say that?
Okay, I'm talking about how I see my life journey.
I see.
And I love hiking, and so for me, it was a metaphor that I used in my book. And so rather than having chapters in my book, I have trails. And so if people take a look at it, they'll see a major trail, and then there's side trails, and then the trails go off, and then they wind back, and here's another trail. Let's take that one. So it's the metaphor, the framework I used for my book.
Remind me after we're done to tell you about something about trails. It would take too much time here, and I don't have all the clear information in front of me. But remind me after we're finished recording.
Okay.
And those of you who are listening, who are going, no, it's not a secret. It's just something I read in a business magazine recently about trails that I want to share with Marjorie. And I'd have to get up out of my chair, take my headphone off, and go look for it. And it would take up too much time. So maybe I'll write about it. So how would you suggest that people who are listening now, what can they do when they are, aside from the macro view of our uncertain times of COVID-19, which is the first time I've mentioned that word on any of my recordings since this infamous trial started, but what can people do? I know they can quiet, they can be calm, they can meditate. We all know that. But to certain types of people, especially the left brainers, this is not going to be enough for them. So what do we tell a person who's a left brainer? And that's not, doesn't make you evil or wrong, left brainers. I'm mostly right brain, but I have been incorporating my left brain into everything for the past 20 years. So if you have a strict left brainer who's, highly into math, technology, different place, different times, how can they relax? How can they trust their instincts when they're filled with the go, go, go thing that they have to do? Tell us.
Well, so it's interesting that you asked me that right today, because I follow an author, and I didn't expect to talk about him, and maybe some people know about him, but it's Rick Hansen, and he's a scientist and a brain guy.
Yes.
So I get his newsletters, and this morning, the newsletter that he sent me was "Take Time to Pet the Lizard." And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, I'm not a real fan of lizards. Like, what's he talking about? And he's comparing he has a story of how as a kid he loved lizards, and then we have the reptilian part of our brain. And this is for the scientists out there and the people who actually want to have some data to support what you and I are talking about. They can follow Rick Hansen, because he is a scientist and has so much research. And he says that if I could take time, if I am triggered and fearful, to actually stop and talk to my fear, the fearful part of me, and be friends with it and say, okay, I know you're afraid. Let me just calm you down. I'm going to calm myself down to, what are you afraid of for me? I've actually got this. I'm safe. Whatever it is that's happening. And to befriend fear rather than to try and shove it away and pretend it's not there. And I found that really interesting, because it also is what I write about in my book, is befriending my fear rather than shoving it away. And so I think for people who are more left brain, to have the time to look at some of the research that's done around heart math, or around energetic fields, or around what our body remembers, some of the memories we have from a child that now might be triggered because of fears that are coming up, that are truly based in physiological and scientific truth. So that would be one thing that I would say, because it is a bit of a leap. I do have people that don't really want to talk to me about this stuff because they think it's too airy-fairy, and then they start really doing some of the research.
But I will say that it's also part of their own fear, because it's something that they can't control, and that they don't know enough about in order to feel in control of a conversation about it. So, but you and I work with a whole group of different types of people, and we need to look at. I think we need to look at the opposites of who we are in general, and how we can help them. So if we're talking about make friends with fear, because the thing of it is, fear is everything and nothing at the same time. It will kill you. And if you look at the other side of fear, you will see that you can learn from it and be more in your own life, and more responsive in your own life. You let the fear devour you, and it's just like this huge dragon comes along and then blows the flames out of their nostrils, and you're dead from the fear. Make another name for the fear and get the fear manageable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, and so your question is one that I actually am challenged by, I will admit. And I think it's a great reminder for me in my writing and in my coaching and as I do podcasts with different speakers and hosts is that I don't just speak to the people that maybe talk my language, that there's a whole bunch of people out there who are wanting really to live their lives differently. And so I guess what I'm saying is I'd love to be more accessible to all types of learners and personalities.
Well, that's the old strategy of, writing in a way that people can see it, feel it, touch it, that kind of thing, so that there's some tactical response to whatever one is writing. I used to worry about my writing. Actually, I didn't worry about my writing. I worried about not being able to write. It took me 10 years to write my first anything. I didn't believe I was good enough for it.
Yeah. Wow.
And now my position of writing is I really don't care what I write.
Yeah.
I write it. You don't like it. Don't listen. Don't read it.
Yeah.
Because I've gotten to the opposite of needing to be approved by outside or anyone. I mean, I can't even get my family to look at my website. I mean, they don't. How's it going? Oh, good. That was it. That would be it. The involvement.
That's such an important thing. What you just said is to, for myself. And again, it ties in with, why am I doing this? Why would I spend time talking to you and having a podcast? Why would I write a book? And really, what I desire, this is my desire for whoever's listening, is that they would really learn to love themselves, that they would see themselves as worthy of trusting themselves. And then also to know that they're not alone, that there are people like you and me, or maybe someone else that speaks their language that can come alongside and walk the path with them or dig into the questions together. So that really is what I long for people to know.
Well, and they will, because you put it out there. That makes it real. So if it's not going to be you they'll listen to, it'll be somebody else. So we've been speaking with Marjorie Warkentin, the author of Saying Yes to Life, Embracing the Magic and Messiness of the Journey, which is available on Amazon. You can go to Marjorie's website at Marjorie, Marjorie, Warkentin, Warkentin. If you're just listening to this, you're hearing what it sounds like. If you're reading about this on my website, which Marjorie will be on as soon as this episode is published, you can see all her contact information. So what is give me a final off-the-cuff response to people who are listening. What are you going to tell them now? One, short phrase. Don't think about it.
I believe what I want people to know is that they can trust their inner wisdom. That they can, if they have a thought, if they have a dream, if they have a feeling, that they should pay attention to that and not worry if it's the right one. Don't question. Go for it.
Pay attention, don't question, go for it. All right, people, you've got it. All of you listeners who've been here before, you know what I always say, to re-listen to the podcast and take notes the second time, and to pass this podcast around. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with somebody you just think might need to hear what Marjorie has to say today. I want to thank Marjorie Warkentin for being here today. As I said before, she's the author, life coach. She's also a contributing author to thriveglobal.com. Go there and find her articles. And when you go to her website at marjoriewarkentin.com, you will find stuff there too. Take care, everybody, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye-bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.